welcome to another episode of Some of Our Parts, the podcast where two friends talk about the movies that add up to make us who we are. I'm Lindsay,
And I'm Jim.
and this week Jim picked our movie. So, Jim, tell us what you had us watch.
This is one of my favorite movies, and it's gonna take me a little bit of to tell you all why, but I picked The Hunt for Red October. So this movie came out in 1990. I first saw this in its premiere week. It premiered at the Senator Theater in Baltimore. The author of the book, Tom Clancy, is from Baltimore, and two of my closest friends, we were all working together. And we had had a very, 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 very tough week for different reasons at work and so on and so forth. And we decided we needed a treat, so we went to go see. It was the second night of the premiere. It was the second night that it was showing at the Senator. We show up at the Senator Theater. For those of you who don't know, it's an old theater in Baltimore. It only has one movie screen. That's how long ago it was built. So, and it's huge, and a guy comes up on stage and introduces the movie, which I think they used to do back in the days. But he said that, oh, we were there a day late. We had missed Tom Clancy, who was there the night before at the premiere and had introduced the movie. And he also joked about how that women were calling the movie the hunks of Red October because of Alec Baldwin and Sean Connery and Scott Glenn to a degree, evidently. So we went to go see this movie. We were avid readers, and we had read all of Tom Clancy's books, and of course, this was his first book, and it was the coming to the big screen, and it did not disappoint. And since then, I told Lindsay I've probably seen this movie 100 times, and then just the experience of seeing it on the big screen, and it's pretty close to the book. It follows the book pretty well, and I like these kinds of stories with the plot twists, and then the little bit of action, but also the thinking and so on and so forth. So this movie it really really made a huge impression on me. So all that said, that's why I picked this movie. And then you have not seen the movie before, correct?
No, I had not. I don't think I've seen any of the Jack Ryan, Tom Clancy
Oh,
things
okay.
at
Um,
all. I've heard of
and
them, but I just haven't seen them.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
although this hits a little close to home for you, though.
Yeah, yeah. It's
So, and I'll let you
I'm
talk about that. So,
I have a lot of family who have worked in, we'll say, the intelligence community.
and you share an alma mater.
Yes, yes. Tom Clancy went to Loyola. I also went to Loyola. My mother went to Loyola. Like, so we're, go Hounds. And Tom Clancy's a Baltimore guy. I'm a Baltimore gal. Like he used to like partially own the Orioles.
Right. I knew that, you had gone to Loyola, he had gone to Loyola, and then
Hmm.
Marilyn plays a bit of a role in the movie a little bit.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and
But
like the Naval Academy and
right.
stuff like
And
that. So, I mean, I grew up I'm from Anne Arundel County, which is where Annapolis and the Naval Academy are. So, like, I went to soccer camp at the Naval Academy and like
oh, okay.
we'd go see like football scrimmages at the Naval Academy and various other things. So, I think it's like we went on field trips to the Naval Academy, like down to Annapolis. So, it's like a familiar setting for
Yeah.
me, I guess. And even
So
when they
what
go to like the Pentagon and stuff like that. I've been to the Pentagon.
ooh. So never been to the Pentagon. Been to the White House, but I haven't been to the Pentagon.
Well, I
So
haven't been to the White House, so I guess we
oh
each
well, so
we have our
but
things.
yeah, well, so did you enjoy the movie?
Yeah, yeah. No, I thought it was entertaining and like I think not exactly like what I expected, which was like in a good way, because I think that like the movies, obviously like the movies of like this era, like the Russians were always the bad guys, right? Because like just that's they follow like where we're at, right? Like post 9/11 all the bad guys were like Arab people, like
Right.
but it was nice that like the point of it was to show actually like they're not like this particular Russian guy is like not a bad guy. So I thought that was like an interesting like twist on what you would expect from a movie like this.
and then and also this came out in 1990, which and it's
Hmm.
set in 1984, I believe it is
Hmm.
the study when he wrote the book, but at the probably the height of the Cold War, I would say,
Hmm.
and then this thing, and it's mentioned, it's referenced throughout the movie about the game that we
Yeah.
once again we play our dangerous game with our most fierce adversary, the United States Navy, and it's
Hmm.
you talk to any number of people who served during that time, and then it's even recognized as a not as a war period, but that segment of time is designated as the Cold War period for our veterans. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
but well, good. I'm glad the movie turned out a little bit better than you anticipated. So
Yeah.
it was also nice to see everybody. There's a lot of people in the movie that
Hmm.
we see later on in their careers and stuff. But yeah, this movie's
Hmm.
jam packed. So
Yeah, yeah. As I was saying to you, I was like, this movie came out in 1990. So did I. I was born in 1990. And I was like, I think that Alec Baldwin might have aged more since 1990 than I have. And I was literally born then. So me
yeah,
going from age 0 to almost 35, I think might be less of a drastic change than Alec Baldwin from 1990 to today.
if for any of our listeners, if you all don't know what he looked like back then, a bit, and by the way, Alec is this makes his second appearance in our movie reviews.
Yes, Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice. Alec was a good-looking guy. I mean,
He
let's
was.
especially back then, he was charming. He was handsome. He was
Mhm.
actually sort of reminds me of a younger Sean Connery when Sean was around his age in his 30s when he was portraying James Bond.
Yeah, I could
Instead
see
of a
that.
Russian submarine captain.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, as I have said before, there is a reason in Clueless why Cher calls like good looking men Baldwins.
It's it's
Watch
it's
this movie and Beetlejuice.
yes, yes,
Not like his current reality show.
or any of his brothers.
Yeah. Don't look at any of them currently.
Yeah, so and I think this was his first big role where he was, the leading man sort of in the movie, even though Sean Connery is in it as well, but
Hmm. Hmm.
as the other
Yeah.
main character. But we
Right.
see a
Right.
lot see a lot of Alec. So
We do. Yeah, I guess a few like because he did Beetlejuice and like Working Girl.
right where he
And
played
he's a supporting character in Working Girl.
Working
And
Girl. Yeah.
and same with like Married to the Mob. Like he was in
Oh,
those
I,
in like
I
the late
forgot about
80s.
that.
And
Yeah.
then this was kind of a bigger.
Yeah. And this was not that the Working Girl wasn't a big release or anything, but this was a huge
Yeah.
blockbuster. When they talked about blockbuster movies when it came out. So,
Hmm. Yeah, so but I enjoyed it. I hadn't really like I obviously like I said, like I know of Tom Clancy. I live in Maryland. Like I'm a person. So I know of Tom Clancy and like his books. Like I think my grandmother had a lot of his books because she had a lot of like spy type novels because of,
mhm.
the world that she lived in, but it's never necessarily been like the genre that like I gravitate toward. Not to
Oh,
say that it's not one that I like, but yeah, so it was new to me, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was an entertaining movie.
good. Okay. Well, do you want to dig into the nitty gritty or
Sure.
start us out?
Yes. The movie was directed by John McTiernan, who also directed Predator, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Last Action Hero, the 1990s version of the Thomas Crown Affair, the 2000 version of Rollerball, which was not great. And so basically, his last few movies that he made weren't great. And then he went to federal prison for like wiretapping, and I think he also lied to federal agents. So he has not been directing. He's since been released, but he's not been directing. I think probably the combination of some flops and federal prison were not great for his directing career. Well, this movie is written by Larry Ferguson and Donald E. Stewart. Larry Ferguson also wrote Highlander, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Alien 3. Donald E. Stewart wrote Missing, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger. So he wrote a few more of
Oh, okay. The
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 Jack
Ryan
Ryans.
movies.
Yeah. So just wanted to share those things. I thought the tidbit about the director was interesting. We don't always
Yeah,
get directors who go to federal prison. So
especially for wiretapping. I mean, it's
yeah.
yeah. I mean, you would maybe drug deals or something like that, or but wiretapping that's pretty sophisticated. So
Yeah. He like got too into all this stuff.
the spy stuff. Well, I know a guy.
All right. So the movies then. The actual movie. So it starts with some text on screen. I don't remember all of what it says, but it's basically just setting the stage that we're sort of in the 80s, kind of towards the end of the Cold War, and basically that like I think Gorbachev is leading the Soviet Union at this point,
Hmm.
and we're maybe making some positive steps, but there's this submarine, huge Soviet submarine near Murmansk, and Sean Connery's on it, and Sam Neill. They have names that are not Sean Connery and Sam Neill, but Sean Connery plays Captain Marco Ramius, who is the commanding officer of this submarine, the Red October. He's actually Lithuanian, which I did catch because they call him the something of Vilnius, and I was like, Vilnius is in Lithuania. I know that.
Oh, I did. Oh, the villainous schoolmaster.
Yes. So Vilnius
Yeah,
is in Lithuania.
I did not know that.
It's
So
the capital of Lithuania, I want to say.
really,
Yes, it is the capital of Lithuania.
look at
Uh,
you,
I
Miss
almost went.
Geography.
I almost went to Lithuania on a trip when I studied
Oh,
abroad.
I
I
thought you
had
were
some
going to say
friends.
almost lived in Lithuania. So
No, no,
that would have been
but
very interesting.
this is. I did not go to Lithuania because it was February, and I was like, no, thank you. I went to Spain instead.
Good. Speaking of which, is this like the bleakest, coldest scene? And it's like
Yeah,
it's like gray. Everything's gray,
yeah. So
and
when
it
we
looks like it's freezing.
right, they're like on the top of the submarine, like the part that like sticks up at the top. I don't know if
Yeah,
that it probably has a name. I don't know it.
the conning
Uh,
tower.
there you go. And this submarine is like ginormous.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wrote down, I was like, are they all this big? And I just don't know.
It's a well, they call it a boomer. It's a missile sub, which means it fires missiles up into the air. So yeah,
Mm,
it's bigger. But they said even this one, like the Red October, was bigger
mhm.
than most. So yeah,
Okay.
it's a big sucker.
Yeah. So Sean Connery, if you don't know who he is, okay.
Shame
Um,
on you.
yes, he was James Bond for several of the earliest James Bond films. He was in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He played his father. He was in The Untouchables, The Rock, Entrapment. I remember him as Alan Quartermain in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is
Oh
not a great movie, but
no,
one I remember
it's
from when I
it's
was a kid.
it's not unfortunately, but boy, I wanted it to be. But
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
also played Robin Hood and
Yes. Okay.
Robin
Yeah.
and Marion. So
Hmm. Yes. I think what I always remember is like the very distinctive Scottish accent that if you watch this movie, he's playing a Soviet person, makes literally no effort to not sound Scottish. But I always think so the quote that I always heard, I think it's from one of the James Bond movies, was just one thumb. That's was the quote that I always because he also had that like just,
yeah,
like he said
yeah,
S's.
the Scottish lisp or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. Yeah.
And he's joined in this scene by his executive officer, so his kind of second in command, Vasily Borodin, who's played by Sam Neill. I think Sam Neill people would probably most easily recognize from Jurassic Park.
I would hope so anyway. So
That's what I
really
recognize him
good,
from.
really good in this role.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Also, actually does a Russian accent.
Yeah. Although I remember him. Yeah, and I remember him from this. This was the first thing that I think I ever
Mhm.
really, recognized him or remember seeing him in first.
Yeah, yeah. But I think yeah, if you're my age, then you know him from Alan Grant
Yeah.
in Jurassic Park.
Is it Professor Grant or Dr. Grant?
Dr. Grant.
Dr. Grant. Thanks. I
Dr.
couldn't
Grant.
remember. Yeah.
Yes. So anyways, they're kind of on the top of the Red October, just in the ocean, very cold, gray, in their cool furry hats.
Yeah. So
looking very sharp.
they do look
And
very distinguished. So
right,
yeah, yeah,
the with their coats and the hats, they just look very, and like obviously like Sean Connery, I think that's just like his vibe. Like
yeah.
his beard and everything is he's very well groomed.
Good hairpiece too, by the way, because we all know
Yes.
Sean. Sean was bald back,
Yeah.
So yeah,
It was a good hairpiece. It looked very
hmm
realistic.
it was minimal as far as it
Hmm.
wasn't like he was like pretending to have like a full head of hair, but yeah, I thought it looked really good. So
It looked very natural.
yeah,
And
so
then cut to London, and our friend Jack Ryan, played by Alec Baldwin, is leaving his home on a business trip. He has said goodbye to his daughter. She wants him to bring her a new a sibling for her like stuffed animal.
Stanley.
Stanley, yes. And he has to get on a plane, and we learn that he's like not super comfortable in planes. We learn more about this later. Why? But he's the flight attendant's like, it'll go faster if you go to sleep. And he's like, oh no, I can't really sleep with the turbulence. And she's like, the turbulence? And then he like explains to her the physics of turbulence. And again, Alec Baldwin, as we mentioned a bunch of his movies. More recently, he was in like It's Complicated, 30 Rock, The Departed. He had smaller parts in like The Aviator, Along Came Polly. In the 90s, he was in Glengarry Glen Ross. So tons of things. And he's Alec Baldwin. Right now, he has a reality show on TLC with his wife and their million children talking about
Yes,
how he shot that lady on the
he's
set of
also
Rust.
hosted SNL like what eight times or nine
Yeah,
times
and
or some.
he played Donald Trump on SNL for a bit. But yeah, Alec Baldwin, you've seen him around, whether you want to or not. Even if you just watch the news,
it's because
you've seen him around.
I was going to say you get to see him whether you see him in a movie in the entertainment industry or on the news. So
Yes. Alec Baldwin, Jack Ryan goes to see his old friend, Admiral Greer, who is the director of the CIA, deputy director of the CIA, excuse
oh,
me.
yeah, yeah,
He is played by James Earl Jones, who you know from voicing Darth Vader and Mufasa. He's in The Sandlot. He was in Field of Dreams, The Great White Hope, an icon, not long ago lost icon
yeah, yeah.
of film. So with again an incredibly iconic voice
Oh
also.
gosh, yeah, and
So
a great presence I think in this movie.
hmm yeah. So Jack Ryan has gotten some information from British intelligence about the Red October. So this giant sub, and it's very very big, but there are these like kind of doors that they can see on the pictures that they have that they don't know what they are. So they want to figure that out. James Earl Jones or Admiral Greer, they have also American intelligence also is aware of the Red October and like it's moving. It's left Murmansk. So Jack wants to show an old friend, Skip Tyler, who was a submarine captain until he was injured. He's out of the Naval Academy, so they think that maybe he might know what these big doors are. But yeah, so they know that it's moving, so time is of the essence to kind of figure out what's going on
Yeah,
because
what
it's like, what's this? It's a Cold War, right? So everything is like,
is
so,
yeah what are they doing? What have they got?
yeah,
What's yeah
what's about to happen?
yeah what can this do? So
Yeah. Meanwhile, in near Murmansk, in the North Atlantic, there is a submarine. They call it something. It's
the
called the U.S. It's called the Dallas, but it's like they call it like a
it's
California or
it's a
something.
Los Angeles
Los
class
Angeles
attack
class. Okay.
submarine. Yeah,
I was like,
so
there's something related to California.
yeah, Los
Um,
Angeles class. So I don't
so
know why
this
they
is
call them that.
the USS Dallas, and they do kind of detect something on their sonar, but they think it's just like whales.
Yeah,
The petty officer who's kind of in charge of the sonar. His name is Jonesy, and he is played by Courtney B. Vance, like a very, very young Courtney B. Vance.
he looks like he's 20 years old, doesn't he? In this,
Yeah, yeah. So he is. We've also talked about him before. He was in The
yeah,
Preacher's Wife,
yes,
but Courtney B. Vance, you know him from being married to Angela Bassett. He's been on Law and Order. I think he was one of the ADAs for a time.
mm-hmm, correct.
Um, he played Johnny Cochran on the People versus O.J. Simpson television series. He was in Dangerous Minds, Adventures of Huck Finn. So he's been in a ton of things over the years on stage and screen. Yeah, he's the sonar guy. They also talk a little bit about opera,
Yeah, and
the
about how
difference
he
between
Pavarotti and
Pavarotti and
and is it
Paganini.
Paganini? Yeah, and
Yeah.
the chief, is like trying to tell some story, and Jonesy says, "Well, at least tell it right."
Yes, yes. So, but it's kind of establishing that he's very like in tuned to sound.
Yeah, and he's good at his job.
He's very good at his job and he's like working on ways actually to like further improve what they can detect. Back on the Red October, we have Sean Connery. And it's funny because like they speak Russian like a little bit, but then they just speak English most of the rest of the movie. Full Scottish accent though. He's like dos vidanya, like just no dos vidanya, no effort. Privyet. I only know like two Russian words.
Oh, okay.
Da, нет.
Net.
Spasiba. He would say like spasiba.
You do that very well, by the way.
Thank
So,
you. I've been practicing the Josh one thumb thing since I was like 12,
okay.
so
Oh. Since you were
it's been
12.
yeah.
Okay.
I've been workshopping my Sean Connery for a while. But the political officer on board wants to talk to him. Actually, no, the political officer, yeah, he's told he's in his cabin. So the
Yeah.
political officer has like broken into his cabin basically. And he's like, excuse me, he's like reading his diary, like he's just flipping through all of his shit.
Yeah, it was, and he's just like, oh, and I like how they always show Eastern European people smoke cigarettes and they hold it like underneath. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly. Like instead of like, I don't know, is that supposed to distinguish Eastern from Western? If you're Western, you hold it between the two fingers, and then if you're Eastern, you hold it like between your thumb and your forefinger. I don't know.
That's a good question.
And,
Um,
and he has it. Does he have it in a cigarette holder? I think also.
I
And
think so. Yeah, I
yeah,
guess because since he's the political officer, he's a little more fancy.
posh.
Yeah. Trying to see
He's
if
the
I can.
posh spice.
Yeah, exactly. His name is Ivan Putin. He's played by Peter Firth, who is an English actor. Uh, he's been in Equus, Spooks, which is like a TV show in England. But he's been other movies, Pearl Harbor, Amistad, Mighty Joe Young. I don't think like huge parts, but he's been in a
Yeah,
lot of things.
he looked
Um,
familiar, and he
yeah,
did do a passable Russian accent uh,
yes,
when
yes.
they switched over to from Russian to English.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, so basically he is there, I guess trying to sort of like make sure that Sean Connery is like in line, and they also have to look at their orders for what
yes,
they're meant to do. So, although first they're kind of talking about again like what he's reading in his books and stuff, like he has the quote from the Bhagavad Gita that Oppenheimer said that I am become death, destroyer of worlds. And he's like,
worlds.
what is this? And Sean Connery's like, an American scientist that invented the atomic bomb said that. But it was his wife's book, like some of
Book.
what, because he's the guy's commenting on like what's underlined and circled. And he's like, that was my wife's book. And we learned that his wife had passed away
Yeah,
about a
just
year before
recently.
this. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and they're kind of talking about what obviously the Soviet Union, right? There's a lot of spies and people trying to keep everyone kind of in line with the party line. So they talk about how there's definitely probably KGB and GRU, which is like military intelligence on the boat. But the political officer was like, "Well, I wouldn't know who they are." Like,
yeah. He said I'd be the last one that they would tell about that. Because Sean says, "Well, how many of them are on board my boat?" And then he
mhm,
goes, "Your boat." He goes, this boat belongs to the people of the Russian nation or whatever. So it's
yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
they open up, they each have a key, they open up the little door to get their orders, and essentially they are supposed to rendezvous with another Soviet ship, which is the Konovalov, which is run by Viktor Tupolev, who is one of Ramius's former student, like he trained him. And do some drills with them and then like go home, basically. And Putin is like, okay, we should like post these orders for the crew so they know what we're doing. And then Marco Ramius was like, nope. And he kills him. He says, where I'm going, you can't follow. And he kills him, but makes it look like he had the most gruesome accident because he like breaks his neck and
I
then
know it.
like,
Got
and
that.
then, yeah,
He
just
suffocates.
gruesome. And then he spills some tea on the ground. And then when people come to check it out, he's like, oh man, he slipped on that tea. It was crazy.
Well, I love how he calls the doctor from after he says, "Doctor,
Yeah.
come down to my cabin. There's been a horrible accident," and then he's like, then he throws the glass of tea onto the floor,
Yeah.
like, oh, I got to make this look like an accident,
Hmm. And then he burns the orders so no one can see them.
and then pulls out another set from his jacket. So
Hmm. Hmm.
he's got his own orders because he's got his own
Yes.
agenda. So
Yes.
sorry,
For
yeah.
cover. Nope. Yep. So back in the United States, Jack Ryan meets up with his friend Skip Tyler at the shipyard to ask him about Red October. Skip Tyler is played by Jeffrey Jones, also in Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice.
Um, I think that's one of his main things. He's also the principal in Ferris Bueller, and he's the king in Amadeus. I think those are kind of the main things that like I always recognize him from. But he's been in a lot of things. As we discussed during Beetlejuice, he's run into some trouble with soliciting minors online, or having pictures of underage
Yeah.
girls. One of the two, bad stuff.
So
Um,
we're picking movies with people who wiretap and then deal in child pornography.
yeah, it's a group of winners. Alec Baldwin shot someone
Oh,
accidentally.
oh, oh, oh! I think he's in the lead right now. Then,
Yeah, yeah.
so
So, what a group. But yeah, anyways, so Jack Ryan meets up with Skip Tyler, at where they're literally like making ships. They go into his office and Jack Ryan's like, maybe it's this, maybe it's like torpedoes. It's like, no, 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 these doors are too big. Like, and Skip Tyler figures out that it's a caterpillar drive, which is a form of magnetohydrodynamic propulsion. So it's basically, he said it's like a jet engine, but it's so quiet that sonar couldn't pick it up. So basically, it's the way that like it's able to move water through to propel it forward super quietly.
yeah.
And he says, funny enough, that to sonar it would sound like whales, which, if we
Mm.
recall, is what they heard on the Dallas earlier.
We got to pay attention, folks.
Yes, we're linking things together.
Right.
So basically, the danger with this is they can't detect it. So this big old submarine could like sail right over to the east coast of the United States.
And it's full of
It's full
nuclear
of,
warheads.
yes,
Yeah.
huge missiles. So that would be bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Skip talks about when he was a boy, he helped his dad build a bomb shelter when the Cuban Missile Crisis was going on, because
Yeah.
they had like what 70 nuclear missiles in Cuba,
Hmm.
and he said this guy can park off New York and he can have several hundred nuclear missiles,
Yes. So it's
and
it's it's bad.
it's bad.
It's bad. Back on the Red October, this is when the medical officer has come to find dead Captain Putin. The medical officer, Dr. Yevgeny Petrov, is played by Tim Curry. Again, we said this is the star-studded cast, folks.
It,
So
it, it,
Tim
it
Curry
get a
from
get a roster, because you can't tell your
Truly,
players without a
Truly.
roster. So
It, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Clue, Home Alone 2, Tim
you name
Curry.
it, you name
Yes.
it. Yes.
So the medical officer is like, okay, well, we need to, they put the guy in the body bag and in the clear body bag, and the medical officer is like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna go back to port to get a new political officer. And Captain Ramius is like, no, we're not. And he's like, well, we need a political officer. And he's like, nope, we have orders. We're gonna keep going. And he takes his key, which is like the point of two people having the key is so that if there's a missile launch, two people have to agree on it. One person can't unilaterally. But now Captain Ramius has both the keys, and the doctor is trying to like raise concerns about this, and he's like, no, excuse me, no.
Yeah, yeah. I love how he just sort of calls one of the seamen over, and he says,
The
I
cook.
want you to witness this." He
Yes.
says, "I'm taking the political officer's key and I'm keeping it."
Yes. So he has the cook and the doctor witness. Another little Chekhov's gun there that we'll come back to later. So anyways, the Dallas is still trying to trail this submarine, the Red October, but Captain Ramius orders his men to engage the Caterpillar drive. We're going to move forward silently. And he says the plan is they're going to leave the fleet, leave the Soviet fleet, and go move past the Americans who have kind of their sort of line of subs in the Atlantic. We're going to conduct some missile drills near the United States and then sail to Cuba. And then we're going to like chill in Cuba with some comrades there. And
Yeah,
everybody's like, "Oh,
where the
nice."
comradeship is warm like the sun.
Yes. And everybody's like, "This is a great plan. We love it." They're
Yeah.
singing the national anthem and celebrating and like it's great. And they keep singing for a while and at some point Sam Neill Borodin is like, "Should they like stop singing?" And he's like, "No, let them sing."
How many stanzas are to this song? It's like,
It's a long song.
I know
It's
it's
like the
like
Kellerman song from Dirty Dancing.
exactly.
This is the song that never ends.
I was good because it's like, yeah, because we bounce back and forth, and can I say at this point, the way they transition from scene to scene, I think is really, really seamless. I like
Mm-hmm.
how they do that
Mm-hmm.
because there are a lot of transitions
Yep.
from one area to another. We go from the Russian submarine, the Red October to the Dallas, and then
Mm-hmm.
to whatever it may be. But I never felt like I was like lost or confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
At
I
least
think
I
it
wasn't. Did you feel?
no. I think the transitions were good because they can see on the Red October, they can see that the Dallas is close to them,
Mhm.
but then it passes right by them. So they can't hear them. But then back on the Dallas, they pass right by them, and then Jonesy is like, I feel like I hear like singing.
Yeah. And they all think he's a little daffy. So
Yeah, yeah. They're
you
like all that
yeah,
Paganini you're listening to,
Pavarotti or whatever.
Pavarotti and
Yeah.
Paganini and whatever. Back in the in the USSR, back in the USSR, uh,
Ooh, that could be a song.
right? I think it could be. This admiral, this like old Soviet admiral, who is we learn later is the uncle of Ramius's late wife. His name is Admiral Yuri Padorin. He gets a letter from Ramius, and when he reads it, he like drops his drink. So it's wild. Meanwhile, Jack Ryan, back in the USA, is summoned again to meet with Greer. It appears that they're like at the Pentagon. As Jack Ryan is explaining like the caterpillar thing, Greer's like we also kind of figured out the silent propulsion because the Dallas like fully lost them like out of
Yeah,
nowhere on their sonar. And then he shows him the letter. So the American intelligence really on top of it. We're
I know.
getting things
They have
quick.
spies everywhere. Click, 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 click,
Yes.
click. So
So
yeah.
they have this letter and they have to go talk to the national security advisor and most of the joint chiefs. And it's like, oh, by the way, Jack, you are doing this. We have
Well,
some slides for you.
I love how he goes, "Well, who's giving the briefing?" And he goes, "Oh, you are."
Yeah.
And
And
he's
Jack
got
Ryan's
that.
like,
He's got that. He stops like walking. He's got that deer in the headlights look. Like, wait a minute.
yeah. And he's like, James Earl Jones, like, we got the slides ready to go. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, he'll ask you some direct questions, give him direct answers, tell him what you think. It'll be fine. You're good. Nobody knows this better than you. You're the
Hmm.
man.
Yeah.
You know,
They go in and he explains the caterpillar system and how it makes it silent and that it can be undetectable by our systems in the Atlantic, both like our actual boats and like the various detection systems. There's some sort of like they call it some kind of like net or whatever
yeah,
systems we have to detect sonar in the Atlantic, like this is going to bypass them so it can come right up to the coast.
Right.
And they also tell him that after the Dallas lost contact with the Red October, the Soviets have been deploying dozens, like 60 subs and boats
Right.
from Murmansk and like other nearby ports in the North Atlantic. And they don't really know like what it means. Like, is this an exercise? Is something happening? And then they talk about the letter. So one of the high admirals there, this Admiral Padoran, got a letter from Marco Ramius, and then he alerted the Soviet high command. And then now these ships, their mission is to sink the Red October. So they think that Ramius has gone rogue. And the military guys, the Joint Chiefs, their thought is he's gone rogue to come nuke the United States.
Right.
But Jack Ryan is like, Jack Ryan is an analyst, so he's thinking. He's over here thinking. He's putting two and two together. He's like, actually, I think he might be trying to defect for a couple of reasons. And these are not reasons, I can see why these are not reasons that like a military guy would find compelling, but they're reasons. Ramius is not Russian. He's from Lithuania. So he was like brought into the Soviet Union. He's not Russian because they do call him like the Vilnius schoolmaster because he's taught so many of these people.
Yeah.
So many of these other admirals in the Soviet Navy, he has trained them. And Vilnius, as we mentioned, is the capital of Lithuania. So he's from Lithuania. And the admiral he sent the letter to is his wife's uncle. And it's
His
about
late wife's
his
uncle.
late wife's uncle. And it's about the 1 year anniversary of her death. So, and the other thing is like because he's trained so many of these people, that means that he has people loyal to him who can help him. As we see with Borodin, Sam
Hmm.
Neill, like is Sam Neill like knows what's going on and
And the other officers we find out.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, although they didn't know in advance,
Well,
or
they didn't
they didn't know he's sending the letter.
letter, right? Yeah, yeah.
That is a
They knew it that he was going to,
yeah, and so they
do
were
what
fine
he.
with that. But they were like, "Why would you tell them?"
They also didn't count on what he was going to do to the political officer.
Yes, yes, also that. But then eventually they're like, "Well, I don't care that you killed him, but why didn't you
Yeah,
tell us?"
yeah, right. It's like
Yeah.
he
So,
was the man was a pig.
yeah. So, anyways, Jack Ryan is explaining this theory. The military folks are skeptical. But Jack Ryan is like, I think that we should try to talk to him and see if I'm right, you know?
Right.
And the national security advisor is like, okay, you can go.
Yeah. How
And you
how
have,
how soon can you get there?
yeah, go ahead. You want to talk to him? You can go. So, and he has a time limit, right? Because there's only a couple days until he'll be close enough to the coast of the United
Right.
States to like destroy DC and New York, destroy like the whole eastern seaboard, really. So
Yeah.
he's like, you have a couple days to figure this out then. If this is your theory, then go prove it. So, now we got Jack Ryan going to try to get to the Red October to figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, the Soviets are going. So this Tupelov, who they were supposed to rendezvous with and do some drills, he wants to kill Ramius. Like he is ramped up.
And
He's
he's
like
played by.
Stellan Skarsgård, another very famous, recognizable actor, looking first off sweaty as hell. That's how they know. That's how they're communicating to us that he's like intense. He's like bathed in red light and sweating.
Uh, Also, I think everyone in the Russian Navy smokes except for Captain Ramius
Yeah, yeah,
and his first officer. Uh,
yes.
but everybody else is like, lighting them up.
Chimneys. Stellan Skarsgård, you know him as the patriarch of the Skarsgård family. So all of his tall Swedish children being in movies. But he was in Good Will Hunting. He's been in the Mamma Mia movies. He's been in the Thor movies. He has
And
been
the Avengers movies.
yes. He's in Dune, the
Hmm.
current Dune movies. He was in Pirates of the Caribbean, one of them. Chernobyl, the miniseries, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. So he's all over the
Ronan.
place. Ronan?
Hmm.
Okay. Yep.
Not 47 Ronin, but Ronin with
Oh,
Robert De
yes.
Niro and yeah, but that he's a really good actor. I like him a
Yes.
lot.
Yes.
So
He's been in a million things, and you've seen his sons Alexander and Bill, and there's another one too. I don't know his name, but
I was going to say there's like a dozen of them, I think,
yeah,
in
he
there.
has a lot
Yeah,
of kids.
he
But and
does.
you've seen him in some movies and TV shows. So
Yeah, the nepotism is high. So
yeah, yeah, they're good though too. They're good though too.
no,
Uh,
yeah. So
but yeah, Tupilov is like basically wants to make his sub go faster than is actually safe to get to Ramius to kill him because his like officers are like, we like can't do that, and he's like, do it.
these hours are 7 bloody hours. These orders are 7 bloody hours old. You know, he goes,
Yeah,
I got to make up time. Give me
yeah,
120% on the reactor or whatever. You
yeah.
know,
They're like, that is completely unsafe, and he's like, do it.
right? We're gonna blow it up.
Yeah. Back on the Red October, as we were just talking about, the officers gather. I love that they sort of shove the doctor out. They're like, can you pull those numbers you've been tracking? And
Yeah,
also the ones from last month and the ones before that. We need to compare.
yeah, because evidently he's not in on the plan, even though
He is.
he's an officer, but he's the ship's doctor. But I guess he wasn't
Yeah.
included in the handpicked list. So
No, no. So some of the officers, as I mentioned, are like, what happened to Putin? Did you kill him? And he's like, yeah. And they're like, okay, well, like, I don't care that you killed him, but like you could have told us.
yeah,
And they're fine with the plan, but again, they're upset that he alerted Moscow that he's defecting. So now
yeah,
all these people are after them, and now they're in danger in a way that they wouldn't have been.
right,
So they're like, we could have just like slipped away. But I think Marco Ramius says he's not worried about the Russians. He knows them.
right. Knows their tactics. He's taught all of
Yes.
them. You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. His worry is the Americans, and he says he's worried they'll send some buckaroo. Cut two. Jack Ryan on this bumpy ass military plane, just scared to death. Clearly. Like it's like the other dude is just talking. They're going up and down. Just like
Yeah.
if you think you've experienced turbulence, you have never.
Oh, but
Um
by the way, the guy doing all the talking and eating the candy bar, that's Rick
mhm.
Dukeman, who was at the time, kind of a well-known comedian.
Mm.
So I don't know how he talked his way into getting into this movie, but that's, that was one of the things I thought that guy's been on Johnny Carson. It's like, but he's going on and on about the weather and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So and like Jack Ryan is just like holding on for dear life.
you can just, I mean, he's like in like full panic mode, and it does look like the worst airplane ride you've ever seen in your life.
Yes, yes. It's the worst. So he's taken to the aircraft carrier, the USS Enterprise, which just makes me think of Star Trek. Welcome to the Enterprise. Um, the commander there is Rear Admiral Joshua Painter, who is played by Fred Thompson, who people might recognize from being the DA on Law and Order for several years, and also a senator from the state of Tennessee.
Also dated Lori Morgan, a country western singer, for a while. So
There you go.
yeah, before he passed
Um,
away.
but yeah, he's another sort of big dude with a deep voice.
Yeah, he's got
Um,
that booming. Yeah, that
yeah,
and of course he smokes them.
yeah.
They
They offer Jack
yeah,
Ryan a smoke, and he's like, No, thank you."
yeah, doesn't
Um,
smoke. So
back on the Dallas, Jonesy continues to try to figure out what he's been hearing. He recorded some of the noise on a tape recorder, which is great. He's got his little
little cassette recorder.
rewind, play,
Uh-huh.
10 times speed, play. But he thinks that their sub has new technology to make it quieter. He
Mm-hmm.
is correct. And he thinks that they're headed towards the coast of Iceland. And his commander, which we didn't mention, but the commander on the Dallas
Oh,
is named Burt Mancuso.
Kuso.
Mancuso. He's played by Scott Glenn. I know him from Silence of the Lambs. Because is it Jack Crawford, I think is the character's
Yeah,
name.
yeah,
He's
the agent in charge.
yeah, he's Clarice Starling's boss. So
Yeah,
I think if you've ever seen Silence of the Lambs, you know who I'm talking about. And also he was in The Right Stuff. Like he's in a bunch of things, but I think for me, Silence of the Lambs is like where I
yeah.
know him from?
Silverado. He was in the big Western movie. He
Hmm.
played Kevin Costner's brother,
Okay.
older brother in that movie. So yeah, he's been in a lot of movies. So
Hmm.
and a
So
good actor. He,
mhm. Yeah, I think he's good in this movie. I enjoyed him in
mm,
this movie too. So,
hmm
he definitely has some skepticism with what Jonesy is telling him, but like Jonesy is sort of playing the sound for him, and he can tell that there is something, right? You can hear very, very faintly like the sound of like a if you speed it up and like listen closely, you can hear the sound of a sub moving through the water.
Yeah,
And
it's man made. It's a rhythmic
yes,
thing. It's
yeah, he
not.
said
It's
that's what he does. That's the word to use. This is man-made. Like this is
yeah,
not an animal.
right. It's not
Um,
natural. So
So he's like, now I know what to listen for though. It's kind of it sounds like kind of off the wall and wacky, but he's like, I know what to listen for now, so I can track it.
hmm
Mancuso is like skeptical, but I think he does ultimately trust Jonesy and like believe him. So they're
yeah,
kind of gonna take course towards where he thinks they're going because he thinks they're going to this particular.
Red Route One
Yes, Red Root one that ends at this particular like formation called Thor's Twins, this
wins.
underwater like rock
Yeah,
formation.
it's like a route that takes them from one part of the ocean to another, and
Yeah.
sort of they've got it all figured out because they mapped it and plotted it and stuff.
Yeah,
So
because they put like, okay, here's where we last detected them. Like, here's where we heard this sound. Like, following that, this is where it
yeah,
looks like they're
because
going. So, but on the Enterprise, Jack Ryan is not having such luck. He's trying to explain his theory, and they do not really believe him. And there's Joshua Painter, and then there's the other, like the XO of the Enterprise. I don't remember who that was.
he's
Because
familiar looking though, isn't he?
he is Charlie Davenport. Captain Charlie Davenport is his name. Oh, it's the butler from The Nanny. It's Niles from The Nanny.
Oh, it is.
Daniel Davis. I knew he looked
Yes,
familiar. The blue
yes.
eyes. He looked familiar. I didn't know he was American because he speaks in a British accent on The Nanny,
And
but
he
he's
does a really
American.
he does a really good job of speaking in a British accent.
Yes.
That's such a turnaround because he's such a hard ass in this movie, you
Yeah,
know?
so he's the one like Painter like has some sympathy for Jack Ryan and Charlie Davenport does not believe him at all. He's like this dude's full of shit. And also like who is he, right? He's not even like the fact that he's wearing a uniform doesn't even make sense. He's not even like in the Navy really. Why is he here telling us what to do? Joshua Painter, Admiral Painter is like, well, let me tell you about Jack Ryan.
hmm
So he went to the Naval Academy. Did you see the ring he was wearing? Is what he says. Did you see the ring he was wearing? Because
Right,
he went to the Naval Academy and was going to be a Marine. So for people who don't know, you can go to the Naval Academy and you can become a Marine or you can become an officer in the Navy. So
right.
you'll graduate as an officer one way or the other, but people can choose which branch to go in. So he basically his third year at the Naval Academy, he went down in a helicopter crash. Like everybody else died basically,
hmm
but he didn't. He was like in traction. He was like in the hospital for months. He like finished he did his fourth year like from the hospital. So, he's basically like back up off of him. Like
Right. He may not look like one of us, but he is one of us.
yes. And like
It
he would have been in
right,
the active Navy had he not like almost died.
right, exactly. So,
Um,
which
so
Lindsay and I both know, by the way, more than likely he would have been medically retired, which he
yes.
may have where he may very well have been. So,
Yeah. Yeah. But
so
he still wears, I guess when he's on the boat, he's still wearing the
yeah. Well, he said it was Admiral Greer's idea to put him in the uniform,
hmm
as sort of to keep a low profile.
hmm
So instead of a
makes
suit, I
sense.
guess to fit in. So
Yeah. Yeah. So the Red October, Jonesy was right. They are passing through Thor's Twins, and they're gonna commence some runs. They're gonna do some exercises there. But as they're doing these exercises, something goes wrong with the caterpillar unit, so they're not silent anymore. Uh, so they're like, well, what happened? They're trying to figure out what's going on there. Back in the United States, the National Security Advisor, I didn't mention the National Security Advisor's name is Jeffrey Pelt. He is played by the actor Richard Jordan. He's not someone I knew of, but He was in the original Dune movie. He was in Logan's Run,
Mm-hmm.
Gettysburg. He was in the movie Romero. He was on the older TV show The Equalizer. So
Yeah.
he's been acting for a while. But he died not long after this movie came out. Actually, he died in like 1993.
Yeah, he had a brain tumor.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, so it was sad. So big he was a good actor. I always
Hmm.
liked him. So but then
Hmm.
after this, yeah, it was terrible that, oh, he was also in Raise the Titanic. He played Dirk Pitt in the 1980 movie Raise the Titanic.
Okay. So yeah, the National Security Advisor meets with the Soviet ambassador. The Soviet ambassador Andrei Lysenko is played by the actor, British actor Joss Ackland, who was in Lethal Weapon 2. He's in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. He was in a movie I liked when I was a kid in King Arthur's Court. He was King Arthur in that movie.
Oh, I didn't know he was King Arthur in that. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so the national security advisor meets with the Soviet ambassador, and the Soviet ambassador is like sort of clueless. He's pretending to be sort of clueless because he's like, "Why are all these Soviet ships like coming in our direction?" He's like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
don't know." Um, and then he says that they're all in a rescue mission,
Yeah.
and the national security advisor is like, okay." Meanwhile, cut to, this is obviously not true because there's a Soviet aircraft now that the Caterpillar system's off, they managed to detect the Red October and drop a torpedo
Yeah.
to blow it up. And the crew is worried, they're trying to maneuver through a canyon and dodge a torpedo, and they're worried about it. And Marco's like, shut up. And they evade it. They evade the torpedo.
I always thought this was one of the best scenes. It's very tense. It's very,
Yes.
there's a lot of drama. There's
Hmm.
the time from the torpedo impact until the time that they have to make a turn, and
Hmm. And it's like he
Ramius is
makes
like,
them wait until the very last second to make the turn. So they
you
all
can
think
see
they're not going to make it.
yeah, he's counting it in his head, and then they've all got their stopwatches and they've got
They're
their
like,
computer.
ah,
Yeah,
10,
yeah,
9,
yeah.
8. And he's like,
Plus
hold on,
11,
hold
plus
on.
12, plus 13. And yeah, and
Yeah.
he's real calm about it. He goes,
And then he's like, go.
yeah,
And they do it.
right full rudder, reverse left starboard engine or whatever it is, and then,
Yeah.
they make that maneuver and then boom, the torpedo misses them. So,
Yes. And some of the crew, because the crew don't know the plan. Only the officers know the
oh,
plan. So
yeah, right. The
one of the
regular
crew
guys,
people is like, well, why are they shooting at us? And Ramius was like, if they were really shooting at us, we'd be dead by now.
yeah, exactly.
He's just like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, yeah.
They're not really shooting at us. We're
No,
just
no,
playing games.
this is all part of the exercise. So,
Yes.
uh,
Just then, the engineer on the ship lets them know something didn't just go wrong with the caterpillar mechanism. Someone sabotaged it.
he's got this piece of
This
whatever
piece was like
he's
cut out.
cut out. I like
Um,
the engineer too, by the way, who, like, I guess gets to wear a different colored jumpsuit because he's
yeah,
the engineer,
yeah.
and
He's got to go do some hands-on stuff. He's got the nice red.
he's always got a
Yes,
cigarette going.
which doesn't feel safe.
Safe.
Like you're down there with all the mechanics and like the nukes, and you're out puffing.
You got a lit cigarette, yeah, it's like whatever. But doesn't he though? I mean, every scene, I think he's got a
Yes.
cigarette. He's
Yeah.
so
He reminds me, do you know what he kind of reminds me of? I think it's the red. I think he's wearing a striped shirt under and he has those glasses. He looks like Waldo.
he does. Well, all the seamen in the Russian,
Hmm.
they all have those striped undershirts.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
oh,
I
see,
like it.
but
It's a good outfit.
bringing up glasses, the captain of the Dallas, the executive officer. This was back in the '90s and stuff. And I remember
Hmm.
we all wore big, oversized
Oh yeah.
glasses. It was like it was like you had two windshields on your face. You
Hmm.
didn't need all that to see out of it. By God, it covered like a third of your face.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I always think of them as like, I don't know why this is the reference that I have, but like Jeffrey Dahmer's glasses. Like, because
exactly.
that's like what everybody was wearing at the
Wearing,
time.
oh, I was going
Jeffrey Dahmer's glasses.
if that I still have glasses from back in those days, and how big they are, the lenses
Hmm.
and stuff, so yeah.
Yeah.
So I just made a
Um,
note of that. I thought, oh, I remember those days, you know.
the big glasses, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, yeah,
So Jack Ryan is still on the Enterprise and he's figuring out Marco's plan to get the crew off the ship. Because
yeah,
basically he can see that the Russians are basically driving. There are some more Russian ships like kind of closer to the east coast of the United States, and the ones coming from Russia are basically trying to drive the Red October towards them
right.
to be shot.
Yeah,
And so Jack Ryan kind of thinks that he's figured out a way that like he's gonna basically have Ramius is gonna have his crew like abandon ship and get rescued. So then he can kind of continue on
right. He
to
can,
defect.
yeah. Uh,
And it seems like the Dallas has picked up the Red October again. And so Jack Ryan is like, I would like to get on the Dallas. And Admiral Painter is like, we don't have like a way to get you there. It's like in the middle of the ocean. And then, of course, just then, like a plane crashes
onto the
onto the deck
deck.
of the because the Enterprise is an aircraft carrier. It
Yeah.
crashes onto the deck, and it's like, oh God, like,
Yeah,
and
he
of
goes,
course, Jack
things are
Ryan
gonna
is
get dicey, you know.
yes. Um, so but he still wants to go despite his fear of flying. This man is flying all over the damn place in the most scary of circumstances.
And and then they tell him, well, the only way we can get you out there is in a helicopter, which
Yes.
he was in a crash, and he goes, and then we got to strip it down to it's a flying gas can.
Yeah. And it's like we have like just enough gas to like get there,
Get
basically.
there. And of course, the weather is awful.
Right. It's the North Atlantic. Things are not going well.
No,
So they're like, I mean, you can go, but no guarantees you're gonna make it,
uh,
basically.
right. It's or that the Dallas is even going to be there. They sent him a message, but they don't even know if they'll get it because they've gone
Right.
deep and
Yeah, and they're like moving, so like they're
yeah.
not in the same spot.
So,
Um, and of course, I love this. He says this to himself a few times, but Jack Ryan says to himself, he's like, "Next time, Jack, write a goddamn memo."
so we used to say that all the time after this movie came out. Like if something happened at work or something like that, say next time, God damn it, just write a memo. You know, instead of telling somebody, just write a goddamn memo. So,
hmm
uh,
Um, this next scene I kind of like because it's Marco Ramius and Vasily Borodin. So Sean Connery and Sam Neill are in Ramius's cabin, and they're just talking about like their plans when they get to America. And it's interesting because like they don't like know that much about America. So he like Sam Neill's like, can I will they like let us go? Like I want to go to Montana. Can I go to Montana? And he's like, yeah, you can go to Montana. He's like, I want to have like a round American wife and a pickup truck or maybe a recreational vehicle and
well,
then travel from state to state. And he's like, can you do that? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, nope, no papers. Yeah,
no,
you can
no,
travel from
no.
state to state, no papers.
I like how he says he wants to raise rabbits and she will cook them for me. It's like, really, that's your idea of a luxury meals to have
Right.
rabbit? Yeah. So yeah,
What a life. But I just love how he says, I would like a pickup truck or maybe a recreational vehicle.
and he's yeah, his face lights up like a little kid, like he's talking about
Right.
what he
He's
wants
just
for
like,
Christmas. You
it's
know,
so like
this,
wistful.
yeah, that I could get that, I could have that.
hmm
So that's for all you people out there that don't forget the freedom that we have.
Yeah. To have a wife and have her make you rabbits.
Rabbits, and you can drive from state to state with no
No
papers.
papers for
No
now.
paper. For, yeah, I was gonna
For
say
now.
for now.
Um, or he might go to Arizona and maybe have more than one wife.
He said he goes, yeah, he goes in the what did he say in the winter
I think he
in
said
the
like
winter I'll go to
Arizona.
Arizona.
Maybe I'll have more than one wife.
Yeah, he goes, maybe I need more than one wife.
Yeah.
I know it's almost like the I wish song, the
hmm
I want, that
Yeah.
yeah, that I know that is it's a nice moment of
Yeah. Because it's
peace.
all very like tense, but they're like, we're doing this for something.
Right,
And at the
right.
end of this, we're gonna have
It,
something.
a better life than what we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, well, we'll
Yeah.
talk more about this. We'll revisit.
More to come.
More to come. The Dallas Jonesy has detected the Red October, and so they go quiet. The Dallas goes quiet so that the Red October can't then detect them and try to evade them. It's interesting continuing this conversation between Sean Connery and Sam Neill because Sean Connery is saying some things and it's like it almost makes it sound like he plans to like go down with the ship or like he's willing to go down with the ship and
Right.
Sam Neill like looks concerned.
Yeah. Because he says he really just, what was it? He said he wanted the solitude or something of, he
Hmm.
missed fishing as a boy.
Yeah.
But like Sam says, like, you don't have any dreams or anything. And
Hmm.
in the book, I will say we sort of learn more of the circumstances of his wife's death. Uh,
Hmm.
Supposedly, it was due to lack of medical treatment that was available in the Soviet Union at the
Mm.
time for her condition. She was a ballerina
Mm.
and died rather young in the in the book he's younger. Ramius is than Sean
Hmm.
Connery portrays him to be. So,
Yeah.
but that's
Okay.
part of the issue is that, and she was denied, or they were denied permission to go abroad to get health care for her.
Mm. Okay. That makes sense too. That makes a lot more
Yeah,
sense.
so
So,
there was, yeah, that was part of the reason then for his, uh why he wanted to defect, and because
mhm.
of that. So
Yeah. So he's saying this stuff, and like Sam Neill's like, what's going on? And then he's just like, okay, anyways, we need to post guards at all the sort of mechanical areas to catch the saboteur.
yeah.
Thankfully, so the Red October has not detected that the Dallas is following them, and they're back on their regular course. So the Dallas is like, great, we got him. And Mancuso gets the information that Jack Ryan is coming. It's like, ugh. And so they have to go off course to get him.
And surface.
Yeah, when
y-
they've just caught up to the Red October. So
yeah,
it's like, oh, come
I know. he's
on.
he's I love how he goes, you're not going to believe this, and he's
Yeah.
like handing the telegram or whatever it is they
Hmm.
give, the teletype.
Yeah. So the helicopter's kind of over where the approximately the Dallas is supposed to be, and they do not see it. So the helicopter pilot's like, we're gonna have to go back. And Jack Ryan's like, no. We only have like enough gas for like a few more minutes. And he's like, then wait a few more minutes. But then it surfaces, they see it. And
Yeah.
it's a whole rigmarole to get
It's
him onto the Dallas.
what he's like, he's swinging in the wind, and
Yeah.
the boat's bobbing, and the
Hmm.
chopper's weaving, and
Yeah, it's the weather is not good. We want to emphasize North Atlantic weather not good. But he gets on. He's like wet and just like in a heap,
well, he cuts
basically.
himself loose. They
Yeah.
said, nope, nope, you ain't gonna make it. We're gonna pull you up, and he just hits the thing and
Yes.
releases and goes into the water.
Very cold. Have you seen Titanic? Very cold.
Well, remember the painter tells him before he goes. He says, "What, you got
If
4 minutes?
yeah, if you get in, you're in the water, you
If
have
you're in the
four
water, you got four
minutes.
minutes before you die of hypothermia." So
Yeah. So, but he makes it onto the Dallas, and meanwhile, back in the United States, the Soviet ambassador now tells the national security advisor, actually, Marco Ramius is coming to fire on the United States.
right,
So we're gonna try to stop him. We're gonna try to shoot, like blow
kill him.
up the Red October. You should help us kill him.
Right, you need to. We need
So
your help.
right as Jack Ryan has gotten onto the Dallas and starts explaining to Mancuso like his theory, right? I think actually Marco's defecting, but literally like right as he's saying that, they get the memo saying that Marco Ramius is going to fire missiles at the United States and they need to take out the Red October. So man the battle stations, let's go.
Yep.
And Jack Ryan is like, no. But they catch up to the Red October because again they had to go off their course to get Jack Ryan. Jack Ryan is like really trying to plead his case to Mancuso because he's like the Russians know that he's defecting because he told them, and they
Hmm.
want to sink him, and they're getting the Americans to do it
Right.
so that they have some plausible deniability on their
Yeah.
end, and so
Yeah.
that like just for help too,
Right.
like on a
Because
practical level,
they haven't been
they
able to get
they
him
haven't been
yet.
able to catch him.
Yeah.
Um, he knows them, right? He trained them. He knows what they're gonna do. So the Americans may be their best chance, and I think also like politically that allows them to say, "Oh, look at what the Americans did to us."
Yeah.
Um,
The
this American aggression towards
aggression. Yeah.
Soviet
Yeah.
Soviet ships.
You have a
Uh,
better Russian accent than Sean did. I'm just going to say so.
well, I'm actually trying.
Okay, so
Um, Sean
uh,
was not.
well, I guess at that point in his career,
He
he
was
didn't
like,
have
"I'm
to.
Sean Connery. You're going to get what you're going to get."
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Write the check.
So, yeah, exactly. So, the Red October does also now realize that the Dallas is behind them and they start to turn. It's like an Ivan maneuver or something like
Crazy
that.
Ivan.
Crazy Ivan. So, the Dallas can is in range though to fire upon them. But Jack Ryan is like, "Please let me talk to Marco Ramius."
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting because they're kind of just like it feels like they're at like an impasse because they're just kind of like both of the ships are just kind of like there.
Yeah, they're just sort of sitting there and they know each other's there.
Yeah. But it's like nothing's like happening, but it's like they're right there, like something can happen.
Right.
So Jack Ryan starts sending messages back and forth to Marco Ramius. It does seem like Marco Ramius is like, oh, like good. He gets
Yeah,
the
this person
plan.
knows what I want to do
Yeah.
and is going to try to help me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he's like, okay, we're gonna have to sink the Red October, which is kind of funny because Mickey was like, haven't you been convincing me to like not
Yeah.
do this?
And he goes, well, that's we got to pretend like we're going to sink the Red October.
Yeah.
So,
So they're sort of heading toward another area of the North Atlantic, and Ramius causes a sort of fake nuclear emergency on the Red October to make the crew abandon ship, basically, to save them.
I love how Tim Curry, though, is the doctor. Now he's like all panicky and, because,
Hmm.
is there a radiation leak? He goes, we don't know. It's like, you can't just ventilate the air. You got to get the men up out of the boat, and
Hmm.
then, oh, well, okay, if you say so, doctor. It's
Yeah.
like,
I guess that's what we're gonna have to
I
do.
guess we'll have to
Abandon
get the
ship.
I guess we'll have to get the fellas off the boat and we'll put them in the life rafts and we'll wait for the fleet. That's what it was.
Hmm.
Wasn't it? It was we'll wait for the fleet to come rescue us.
Yes. So they get to go back up above the surface once again. Fun furry hats.
And again, the weather is
I
crappy.
was gonna
My
say that was my next line. The weather seems to suck.
my God. Note to self: don't go in the North Atlantic during winter for cruises. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
No. I don't imagine that there are many of them in the
I
North
would I
Atlantic
would hope
at
not.
that time of year. They were like, we watched Titanic. We're not doing that again.
Exactly. Yeah. We know about all the Edmund Fitzgerald and
Exactly.
the whaling ships and stuff that
Hmm.
were, lost at sea.
So they're above the surface and an American ship, like an American frigate or something,
Yeah, it's a frigate.
um, comes and Marco sends his men into the life raft and he stays on and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna scuttle the ship so that the Americans can't have it." And they're like, "Yeah, Captain,
Well,
great."
and again, Tim Curry goes, "You'll get the Medal of Lenin for this, the Order of
Yes.
Lenin." He's like, "My God, you're the bravest man I've ever met in my life."
I know.
Poor Tim Curry. It's like he plays this inept character. It's
Hmm.
like, really, you're going to go down with your ship? Oh, that's so
Yes.
so brave of you.
It's funny because he's like, but he's a doctor, so he's like a smart guy, but he like has no awareness of
It,
like
it, it,
any of he's naive.
very much so. And then,
He's like, but the rules,
yeah,
we have
yeah,
to follow them.
right, yeah, and oh, yeah, and I love, yeah, like, the officers and I will stay aboard and we'll scuttle the ship. You stay with
It's
the
like,
men and you make sure that they're rescued.
wow, you're so brave,
I
Captain
know he's like,
Ramius.
I know you could almost see him like, Captain Ramius. I wish I could be like you when I grow up. But
Hmm.
anyway,
So, meanwhile, the Americans are kind of fully sort of now following Jack's plan. Admiral Greer gives cover by like basically pretending to shoot a missile at the Red October. And
yeah,
then,
and detonates it prematurely. I love that
yes.
where he goes, as far as you know, that it hit the Red October, and then he shows his credentials, and I was never here.
Hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Um, Meanwhile, Jack Ryan, along with Commander Mancuso and Jonesy are going to the Red October. They're in a little rescue sub going to the Red October. A little teeny tiny little rescue
Teeny
sub.
tiny little thing. Yeah.
So they get on, and it's kind of funny because once again they're all just kind of like standing there looking at each other. The engineer gives the engineer who is still smoking gives Jack Ryan a cigarette, which he does at this time take, I think, for
What Jack asked, he goes
oh, yes.
like to break the ice, sort of
Yeah.
like,
He's trying
and
to like
yeah,
find
yeah,
some common ground, be a
right.
little some courtesy here. Um
And
and
then
then
they
he's
said he turns green.
yes. Then he speaks a little bit of Russian to Marco Ramius, and then he switches to English. And so they're kind of arranging this defection, the surrender,
Yeah.
when suddenly another Soviet ship comes and is firing. So it's Tupolev, Stellan Skarsgård, once again. And like when they show him, this man is it's buckets of sweat. This dude is pouring sweat. And it's the lights are red, so he looks like terrifying.
I know somebody must have had the biggest spray bottle,
I know.
wet him down. He's not sweaty enough.
He's
It's
not wet
like,
enough.
yeah, it's like, I know he's like, it's dripping off of him, isn't it? I mean, it's like,
Yes, like it looks like he's been doused.
exactly.
Um, he almost looks like in Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Ark when they first open it up and the face starts melting. Like that's what he looks like. But he's coming after them, and so basically the Americans and the Soviets on the Red October have to work together, including Jack Ryan. Like he's like, "Oh, you're like the Navy," and he's like, "I mean, not really." And he's like, "Sit here," and he starts like, Raimi starts like barking orders at him, and Jack Ryan's like, "How do I do that? I
Yeah,
don't know what I'm
yeah.
doing."
What all ahead flank, and he goes,
Yes.
how?
He's like, "Turn this knob." Um, and it's funny because Jack Ryan's like, "I just write books for the Navy." And then they start talking like, well, what have you written? And he like wrote this book about a particular like admiral and like their tactics. And
Halsey from World War
Halsey,
II. Yeah,
yes. And
Bill
Marco's like,
Halsey.
Ramis is like, I've read that book. All of your conclusions are wrong.
Halsey was a fool.
Yes. And Ramius again, the man knows what he's doing. So a torpedo's coming at them and they
Mhm.
go straight at it to sort of cut it off because essentially when the torpedo is fired, it takes time before it's armed. So it's fired and then it arms itself after it's fired. So he basically wants to close the distance to the torpedo before it can be armed
Right.
so that it can't be lethal, essentially. And then we learn who is the saboteur. It's the cook, the guy that we met earlier. That's why we
Who's
met the cook.
who's still on board.
Right. Because I was wondering, I was like, why is the cook up here when someone died?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's
Well,
because
no.
he's a spy. Because I would have been like, you're the fucking cook. Why are you up here?
Yeah,
What are you
really.
doing?
What do you? Well, it looked like he was clearing the dishes off the table, so
Yeah.
like busboy. So
Yeah. But it was just interesting. Like, you would think that you would be like, oh, let me leave the dishes for now.
yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
he
or yeah.
lingered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he starts shooting at the officers. He wounds Sam Neill, apparently fatally. So sorry he doesn't
Yeah.
no
Mortally.
yes, no Montana for you,
No.
Vasily Borodin. May
Oh, and
you
he even
rest in
says, he
peace.
goes, I would have liked to have seen Montana. Oh, it's so
Oh.
sad,
It is really sad. And you could tell that like him and Ramius were
Oh,
like
because Ramus,
friends.
yeah, runs over to him, and he rips open his jacket, and he's,
Bleeding
yeah,
from the chest. So yeah, it's
yeah, that's
that's
not good.
sad. But then the spy, the cook goes down to he's going down to like the nuclear missile bay to try to like set them off basically to destroy the ship.
Yeah.
So Ramius and Ryan go after him. Again, Ryan, I was like, you just said you like this is not your gig. You write books, but okay.
Well, in his
Um,
defense, Mancuso told him, he goes, go with him, Ryan, go help him.
yes.
It's like,
Yeah. It was funny too because on the way, Mancuso tries to give Jack Ryan a gun. And Jack Ryan's like, well, they're surrendering.
yeah.
And Mancuso says, well, they might change their mind.
He
And
goes, you
so,
want to bet your life on that?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a good thing because now Jack Ryan has a gun. So they go after him. The guy wounds Ramius. not mortally, just, a flesh wound
Yes. It's always
in the
in the
shoulder.
shoulder. Yeah.
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 But Ryan goes after him, and Ramius is like, "Be careful what you shoot at. Most things in here don't react too well to bullets." Because he's going down into the nuclear missile bay. And it's funny. And again, we're cutting back to the Tupolev, who remains the sweatiest person you've ever seen. Red lights, just like, and I think it's compelling imagery because he is like
Yeah.
maniacal at
Oh,
this point. He's
oh.
like, "I will kill Ramius." Like he
Yeah.
is determined. Like he's lost it.
Yeah.
And it looks like his ship, there's like steam and like alarms and like,
Oh,
because he
there's,
was pushing it past its power to
I was
catch
getting,
up.
yeah, it looks like it's going to blow up,
Yeah.
but yeah, and everybody on his ship looks like they're scared to death, which I guess I would be too, because one, your captain's a little,
Yeah.
and
Lost it.
yeah,
Lost it.
and you're going to shoot another Russian submarine, and he probably really didn't tell him why.
Yeah.
You
And I
know,
imagine they know it's like this is Marco Ramius, who is like
right? Like,
legendary,
yeah, yeah.
like shooting like George Washington.
Yeah, or the Secretary of the Navy or whatever. It's like,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
he's a legend.
I don't know any current famous Navy people, so
Sorry, no, got nothing for you. So
somebody, John Paul Jones.
there you go. I don't even know the name of the acting Joint Chief of Staff, or
Mm,
the head of
they
the
keep
Joint Chiefs.
changing them. It's hard to keep track of these days.
I think I'm
Um,
next in line. Anyway.
Honestly, I don't text war plans, so we're ahead of the game.
I know, really, yeah. So far,
Um,
we're out of trouble.
yeah, but it's funny. So Jack Ryan's going down to try to catch the cook saboteur spy, and he's doing his impression of Raimi. It's like things down here don't react too well to bullets.
He doesn't do a bad job.
I
Not as
was
good
gonna say
as you.
he does a pretty good one. He does a pretty good one.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, like all of this is happening at the same time, right?
There's a lot
Jack
going
Ryan's
on.
going after this dude. Tupolev fires another torpedo, but he's set their torpedoes now that they're armed immediately upon
Yeah,
firing.
it's armed in the tube. It's
Yeah,
like,
which is dangerous for you.
because it could blow
That's
up inside the
right.
tube
That's why they set them to arm later, so you don't
when
blow
it's
up your own sub.
away from
Yes.
your ship. Yes.
Yes, just logic. I'm not a big military strategist, but like to me, sounds like that makes sense. But yeah, he's arming it. They're armed immediately before
Right.
firing so that they can
Exactly.
shoot them. But basically the Dallas kind of
And this is a
gets in
good.
front of it and sort of like like takes it so that the torpedo will follow the Dallas.
It diverts it off, yeah, and that was a
Yeah.
good scene. I like because and again, I think the scenes shot underwater, the sub scenes are very
Hmm.
well done. Because
Yeah.
and then the sounds and stuff, yeah. So it
Hmm.
sort of takes the torpedo away from the.
Yes, and then the Dallas like man does a maneuver to evade it where it like breaches like a whale, and it literally looks like a whale where it like kind of shoots up and then psh, like crashes down on the surface of the water. So it um misses it, and it's funny because all the Soviets who had been on the Red October, they're like on the boat watching this happen, and they think that Captain Ramius is like defeating the Americans in battle, and they're like, "Yeah, it's
Exactly.
our
Yeah,
captain."
our captain is
Um,
fighting. Yeah, you could see the doctor going, "Oh, my captain, my captain."
yes. So,
Anyway,
but the torpedo is still active.
and it's still looking
And
for
it's still
something.
looking for the Red October. Meanwhile, Jack Ryan is down in the nuclear missile bay trying to find the cook. He is also sweating a lot.
His shirt is soaked,
Yes, he is, and like his hair is dripping. Like he
and
got
and
the Stellan Skarsgård treatment.
and it looks like it's like a damp, humid
Yeah,
atmosphere. And you would think that would be bad for missiles to rust. I don't know. I would have
I
thought it
don't
would have been
know.
bone dry, but
Right, or maybe it's like some of the heat is coming off of them, or
maybe I
I don't
didn't think
know.
about that. Yeah, so
But yeah, the cook is about to blow up the ship. He's about to touch the
oh,
wires.
yeah,
And he of course, because he's a stupid bad guy. Bad guys in movies always got to linger.
I
They got
know.
to tease
Instead
you
of
a little
just doing
bit.
it, yeah,
Just do it. Like if I was a
uh,
bad guy, I would be like blow up. But
Right,
he's like, ha
exactly.
ha 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 ha. He's got to like make faces at Jack Ryan before he does it. Like, look at me, look what I'm about to do. And then Jack Ryan shoots him and kills him.
Yeah, like
You
shoots him
idiot.
several times.
Yes.
It's like, yeah.
He had to make sure. I feel like that's this is a person who doesn't usually shoot people. It's like, is he dead? Boom, boom, boom.
Well,
A little more?
got to remember he's a trained Marine now. He was a Marine, so
He is, but he's never had to like shoot someone in a combat situation. He never got that far.
good point. Good point. So, yep.
He's done it in theory.
Yeah,
Now he's doing it in practice.
that's
So he's
true.
like, let me better make sure. Boom,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom.
Oh,
Couple
yeah.
extra.
I think he gives him more than enough to get the job done. So,
Yes. So, meanwhile, the torpedo, it's still coming after him. So Mancuso is now kind of taken over command of the Red October, and he maneuvers the Red October so the torpedo he like turns such that the torpedo turns around and goes back at Tupolev's ship and blows it up. So Tupolev is blown up by his own torpedo.
and by the way, one of our other lines that we always quoted was, "You arrogant ass, you killed us," which his first officer looks to Skarsgård and tells him that, "You arrogant ass, you've killed us. You killed
Yeah.
us." Yes. Um,
So
love
the
that.
yes, and the Soviets that are in the boat watching and also the government think that the Red October
Is the one that's blown
is the
up.
one that exploded. So that his men think that he scuttled it, like he said, which is basically like destroy it, leave it at the bottom of the ocean so the Americans can't have it.
Right.
As the Soviet ambassadors talking to the national security advisor, the national security advisor knows what really happened, and he's like, "Well, there's wreckage all over.
Yeah. And it's deep.
It's going to be hard to get
Yeah, it's
to."
scattered for miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Mm,
is tough.
yeah.
And the Soviet is like, also there's like one other ship that like suddenly, we had it, but then like around that area it also like we lost it. And the national security advisor's like, wow, you guys lost another sub?
Submarine.
Wow.
Wow.
You guys
You,
are
you
like, you're not doing
yeah.
very well, are you? Hmm.
And you could see the look on the ambassador's face. It's like, God, I hate to say this. I don't want to say this. And
I
yeah,
know.
and Pelt is like, you lost another submarine.
He's loving it.
Oh
He's
yeah.
loving it. He's just like, oh.
He's got that dish of candy. He's like
Mm-hmm.
eating them
Eating
candies and stuff.
candies.
Yeah.
And the Soviet ambassador's just like, yeah, we lost another.
Could you help
If you
us?
guys see it, could you let us
Yeah,
know?
perhaps in the future the technology will be made available that we can do a
Yeah.
more thorough investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
maybe.
NSA is like, yeah, I mean, you guys could have like, we could have helped you from the beginning,
Yeah,
maybe, but
if you'd come to us sooner,
you told us it was a rescue mission. So,
yeah. So, and it's sort of to me it's like did it play a part in like the beginning of the end of the Cold War? It's like it sort of seemed like that was well, if we talked to each other a little bit more openly, if you'd
hmm
come to us and said so, but yeah.
Meanwhile, the Red October is now in a river in Maine. Um, Imagine if you're just you're living your life in Maine. You like you're out fishing, and then all of a sudden a gigantic submarine with like a Soviet and an American at the top are just rolling by.
Martha, Martha, come here. Martha, what
Do
is
you
that?
dude, what the hell is this? Um, but they're talking and basically Ramius says, obviously like what you mentioned about his wife, that wasn't really covered in the movie, but he says that ultimately the reason that he decided to defect was that the Soviets created the Red October with the express purpose of initiating a strike on America. So they were going to strike
Right.
America first, and he didn't want to be used to do that.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of ultimately made that decision for him. Yeah, they both talk about like Jack Ryan talks about this area in Maine is like where he grew up and like he learned to fish, and then Ramius is talking about like when he learned to fish.
Uh-huh. And both of them from their grandfathers.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. My grandfather also taught me how to fish.
Aw, really?
Yeah, in Kentucky. Maybe my grandmother, my grandparents in Kentucky taught me how to fish. Yeah.
And well, it's funny you mentioned that because my grandfather taught me to fish. So not that I ever kept it up or anything, but yeah.
Yeah.
So it wasn't my dad; it was my grandfather.
Yeah,
Who?
my grandparents taught me how to fish.
Yeah.
Both, I think somewhere between, I don't know who I went with first, but I would always go with like one or the other, my
Uh-huh.
grandmom or my
That's
poppy in
nice.
Kentucky to fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a
It was my
picture.
grand.
I have a picture like that I can see from where I'm sitting of me and my grandfather fishing in a
That is
pond.
nice. That is so
Yeah.
nice. So, see, there you go.
There you go. We're all united by our
Yeah.
grandparents teaching us, grandfathers teaching us to fish.
To fish and to drink beer.
I don't know about all that. But yeah, and then in the end, Jack Ryan is flying home with a new teddy bear for his daughter, and he's asleep on the plane.
Finally.
He
So,
seems to have maybe overcome a little bit of his fear of flying because he did some really difficult flying over
well,
the course of this movie. So
it doesn't look, I don't think he got much sleep during this whole episode either.
no,
Um,
no. So he's probably crashing a little
it
bit.
did look like he had pretty good seats on the aircraft, though,
Yes,
didn't it?
both he was by himself. So he was
Yeah.
in first class.
Yes.
It
So,
wasn't the first class experience of today where you get your little pod that lays down, but like
yeah,
still.
that I was going to say, it did it look to you like it was, it looked like first class, like, yeah, like on domestic flights,
Hmm.
but I
But it
did,
was
yeah,
also first class in like the 80s.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, and he's like out like a light. So,
Hmm.
and then we see, yes, like you said, Stanley's brother.
Stanley's new sibling, yeah.
Yeah. So,
And that's the end of The Hunt for Red October.
so I will say in the credits, I don't know if you watch the credits. Stanley was
I
played by Stanley, it said.
Oh,
So
okay. I didn't
Stanley
know
said
that.
himself. So, yeah.
I love
So,
that. Yeah, I did see they sort of broke it down. They're like
hmm
the crew of the Dallas, the
that,
crew of the Enterprise, the crew of the Red October, like in the credits. So,
um, I did read where a lot of the background scenes with crew members and so on were actual naval people because
okay.
they said that it was easier for them to, and the Navy cooperated in the making of
Hmm.
the picture. So, but it was easier for them to get Navy people to teach them how to act than to get actors how to be act like Navy people. So
Yeah. Yeah, because it's kind of for Navy people, if you're in the background, it's just like do what you would normally do. Just like walk around and
just
like
do your
press
job.
buttons and
Yeah,
write with
yeah,
pencils and stuff.
right.
So, and
So
I guess it makes sense if the books were published by the Naval Academy that the Navy would be willing to cooperate with the movie about it because it makes the Navy look cool.
oh gosh, yeah. So it was probably, along with Top Gun, one of the top recruiting, oh, so people want to
Hmm.
go into submarines, because of this
Hmm.
movie. So, which, by the way, I'd found out, well before this, but talking about the submarine, you have to volunteer to do that. So that's not an assignment. You have to
I
ask
think
for
I
it.
knew someone who went on submarines.
Subs,
I
yeah, I've
knew some
talked.
people who went to like I went to school on a military base, so I think a disproportionate amount of people that I went to school with joined the military, and I
Hmm.
know some girls that went to the Naval Academy, and I think one of them did do
Subs.
some time on submarines.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
which seems crazy.
it's
I also know
strictly,
someone who became a Top Gun.
there you go. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah.
But and well, yeah, because you grew around that area, and that's why I said I knew. I wrote a note that Lindsay has a connection with this movie because of the geographical area and so on.
Mm-hmm.
More, the Loyola and in the academy and that
Mm-hmm.
area and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my dad was in the Navy, so I
Okay.
always, I had a little bit of a, he wasn't on subs. He was, although I will tell you this true story. My dad served 3 months aboard a British submarine during the Korean War
Hmm.
as a sonar man. That's what his job was on a destroyer. And, during the Korean War, the British and so on, all the Australians were all involved. And
Mm-hmm.
they had communicated to the U.S. Navy that they needed a sonar man temporarily until they got a replacement. And my dad volunteered and he was shipped over. He went over on, I forget what they call it, but it's like this little chair thing that went from his ship to the submarine, and he stayed on the submarine for 3 months. So
Oh, nice,
yeah,
nice. So
he
he
still,
was like Jonesy.
yeah, he was, and had he in the things I have left now. Dad's no longer with us, but one of the things is they gave him a little program and stuff, and then and a welcome thing about welcoming him to the ship. I can't remember the name now of the sub, but yeah, he talked about that one as he when I grew up. So anyway,
That's cool. Shout out to the Navy. I root in the Army Navy game, despite being from Fort Meade. Fort Meade is technically a purple base, so it's not just Army. It's
Right.
mixed, but being closer to the Naval Academy, I always feel that it is my duty to root for Navy in the Army Navy game.
I the same here. So
Since the Academy is here. If I lived in New
right.
York, I would root for Army, but like I've been to the Academy. I had a lovely soccer camp experience. I stayed in
They
the plebe dorms. I ate in the mess hall.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I've
Oh my God.
been on the grounds, but that was just years ago visiting.
So during soccer camp, like at the end of soccer camp, the last few days was when the plebes arrive.
Ooh,
And it was
mad,
wild. Because
madhouse.
they have to like load off like a bus or whatever, then they like grab some gear and then they have to stand like in formation at attention. And I just remember they're like holding up their little like code of conduct books or whatever.
Hmm.
It's like they're holding it like so close to like they can't read it, but they have to
Oh,
like stand there like holding it up. And their parents are like recording them like being screamed at. It's so funny watching them. They're just being like berated, and their parents are like, "Oh,
so sweet.
look at
Oh,
little Johnny. He's all grown up, getting
yeah,
screamed at."
yeah, getting yelled at by
But yeah, they have to
somebody.
like they have to like get like their white shoes and like they're getting all their uniforms and stuff
Cool.
and then lining up and being yelled at. And then lots of fun stuff. Then at the end of the year they get to do the Herndon climb.
Yeah, where they grease
Classic.
the
Climb that grease pole to
mhm,
switch their plebe hat for an officer
for
hat.
an officer's hat. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's very people if you've never seen that, I encourage you to Google it. It's a
oh
wild
yeah, yeah.
situation.
Luckily, we live in Maryland, so we get to see it on the news every year.
Yeah, it's
So
always in the
whenever
local
it's
news.
always on the local news. Yeah. So
But it's quite a sight.
yes, it is. Yeah.
It's a
Well,
bunch
it
of
builds teamwork.
certainly does. The people get
Yeah.
very close. You're a bunch of like shirtless or sports broad young
Hmm.
people just like climbing on each other up a grease pole.
Covered in grease.
Yeah.
Some sort of either
And
crisp.
they're like squirting them with hoses while it's happening.
Oh, right. I forgot
So
about that. Yeah.
it's
So
it's quite a sight. But yeah, so go Navy.
yeah,
I don't
beat
remember
Army.
who won this year.
It was Navy. Navy had a great
Oh, okay.
season. Yeah,
Great. Well,
great season.
woohoo. Go
Yeah.
Navy.
So yeah,
Anchors away.
there you go. So well,
So
I'm
yeah.
glad you enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was a cool movie.
I think it was a fair depiction of the attitude or the mood of the times. You know, the Cold War,
Hmm.
the scenario and stuff. Like you said, the
Hmm.
Russians were the bad guys. We were the good guys. But
Hmm.
in this scenario, and I think it was maybe that was part of the reason it was maybe a little more popular was his the main character in Tom Clancy's work. It was it that he was actually trying to do something for peace and not for war.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
and the reason this came to prominence, or it was supposedly, was because it was one of Ronald Reagan's favorite books. Ronald Reagan,
Mm.
who was president at the time, raved about it, and then that's when it became popular. But like we Clancy paid, or it was paid $5,000 for the rights to this, and it was published by the Annapolis, the Naval Academy Annapolis Press. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that was a small start, but then he made enough money where he could buy part of the Orioles. So
Yes. Yes. And I also looked up, he lived on like a 50-acre estate along the Chesapeake Bay in like Calvert County in
nice,
Huntington, Maryland.
nice.
That after
So,
he died sold for like millions and millions of dollars.
oh, I'm
So
sure, I'm
he
sure.
was doing, I mean, he owned part of the Orioles, and I think at one point he was going to buy the Minnesota Vikings, but it fell through.
Oh, I didn't know that. So,
Yeah.
um,
Wikipedia told me.
the other Clancy story I'll have is that he was at a book signing for a later book where he wrote with some general, and I can't remember. I have the book where he
Hmm.
signed it, but it was a bookstore in Towson Town Center, which
Mm.
is no longer there. But we stood in line to wait to get him to sign the book along with this general he wrote the book with. And as they were setting it up, Tom Clancy smoked. And this was 94, 95 maybe. And there was that you couldn't smoke in public buildings anymore. And I remember distinctly, he said, "Oh, I need an ashtray." And he said, "Mr. Clancy, you can't smoke in here." And he looked at the guy, and the guy says, "I'll get you an ashtray."
I'm Tom Clancy.
I'm Tom Clancy, exactly. Yeah, the whole reason you have a job is because I'm here right now. So,
Right.
so
Well, about that, so I had questions. I know you were going to talk about this. So there are other Jack Ryan movies
Mm,
and a show, right? So there was Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger, which starred both Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan.
right.
Those were 92 and 94. Then in 2002, The Sum of All Fears, which has Ben Affleck as Jack Ryan.
Which
Is
is
that?
terrible.
Yeah. And then 2014, Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit with Chris Pine as
Yeah,
Jack
that
Ryan. And then now there's the show on Prime with John Krasinski as
which
Jack
is
Ryan.
which is very good.
Yeah.
That's good. So yeah, so part of this was so this was a big hit, big success,
Hmm.
and the story is that they wanted Alec Baldwin to come back and play Jack Ryan in the next movie, and he said no. He said he
Mm.
didn't want to be typecast, and the rumor was that he got that from Sean Connery, who talked about being typecast as James Bond,
Mm.
and said no, no, you don't want to be, and so which maybe looking back, maybe he should have taken the role, but it
Hmm.
went to Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford was approached to do this movie, they said, but he didn't do it because he was I can't remember what movie he was doing, but he did another movie. He was in the middle
Mm.
of another deal. But I mean, so I guess that's why he was the backup for the next ones.
Mm.
Um, Also, for those of you who, so that was, yeah, so you kind of wonder what would have happened to Alec Baldwin had he continued down that path. Because
Hmm.
the other two movies, Clear and Present Danger and uh, shoot, now I can't think of
Patriot
them,
Games.
Patriot Games, which were both very good movies and had good cast and everything. But I think he could have, I thought Alec Baldwin was good as Jack Ryan in this movie.
Hmm. Hmm.
He was true to the character in the book. He was not he had not become like some sort of agent or anything. He was an analyst and
Hmm.
was he was sorted out facts and so on and so forth. So and he was sort of pushed into the part of being an
Hmm.
action hero. But
Yeah. It looks like some of the later ones that's different because like I haven't watched the Jack Ryan show that John Krasinski's on, but he definitely looks a little more like
oh, he's cut and
running, jumping, shooting.
yeah. So in
He's like wearing a t-shirt.
in the books, in the later books, he does become like an agent. He goes
Okay.
out into the field, but this was the start of it. But was so, and then for what I was going to say was for those of you all maybe who um, the U.S. military is now being called upon to do some things. Well, if you read Clear and Present Danger, the president decides that because of the drug cartels, that's how the title of the book comes about, is that he mobilizes the U.S. military to go down into South America to hunt down the drug cartels and sends a specialized unit down there because they present a clear and present danger to the
Hmm.
United States of America. So
Hmm.
it's that's it's kind of my friend and I were just talking about this the other day. It's sort of like history repeating itself. I said, "Are
Yeah.
we living in the storyline of a clear and present danger now?" And he says, "It sounds like it." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I was
but
thinking about the signal texting thing when I watched this. I was
so
like, imagine if this was on Signal. They're like,
yeah,
we found the
yeah,
Red October,
yeah.
like
And this is what we're gonna
hands clapping
do.
emoji, like
I
fist emoji, American flag emoji.
yeah,
Yay.
I
We
saw a
know
commi
here's exactly where they are. We're gonna bomb them at this time. Yay.
there was a comedian that I saw posted on YouTube just I think either yesterday or today, and it was about I didn't know we were communicating by emoji now. He says, "Can you imagine if your doctor does that, like sends you like the sign of the crab, and you're going, oh, I have crabs now, and he goes, oh no, he goes, that's you have cancer.
Oh my God. Sad face.
Sad face, sad, yeah, so sad emoji face. So anyway, it was like because he
Sad face,
said
thumbs down.
thumbs down. So, but yeah, so I often wonder what if Alec Baldwin had decided to continue as Jack Ryan, at least for the next two movies.
Hmm.
I really would have kind of cemented him, I think, as far as
Hmm.
like, and it would have typecast him maybe, but in the later books, Jack Ryan becomes president of the United States
Yeah, and I don't think Harrison Ford's been typecast, but Harrison Ford had also done like Indiana Jones and Star Wars
and
before
Star
that.
Wars
So,
and
and Blade
but
Runner.
yeah, and he, and Sean Connery did do other things, but unfortunately, I guess, in his time, maybe he was thinking about in the
Mhm.
60s and so on.
Yeah. But also
You
he
know,
did like a bunch of James Bond movies, like a
oh
lot.
yeah, yeah. Although you know who did more James Bond movies
Hmm.
was actually Roger Moore,
Hmm.
which
Interesting.
I didn't know until not that long ago. I just assumed Sean was the most had the most movies, but it was
Mhm.
Roger Moore.
Hmm.
So and then Daniel Craig and then Sean, or Daniel Craig and Sean I think are tied, but
Hmm.
getting off that subject. But anyway,
Yeah.
so yeah, so I would have liked to see Alec Baldwin continue in the role. Not that I didn't enjoy the Harrison Ford portrayal. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
but
I
those are
imagine maybe Harrison Ford's Jack Ryan might be similar to like Harrison Ford in Air Force One.
it is. It's
Get off
very.
my plane.
It's
I've never
yeah.
seen those, but I have seen Air Force One.
It's a yeah. It's a duplicate performance. So
But
basically,
yeah.
so yeah. So again, like I said, this just made a big impression. The first one and stuff. And I've seen all the other ones. This by far, I think, is my favorite. No
Hmm.
doubt. But the Patriot Games is good.
Hmm.
That's the one with Samuel Jackson.
Okay.
Plays Ryan's Jack Ryan's best friend, he's in the Navy, but that involves the royal family,
Mm.
and it's supposed to be Charles and Diana,
Mm.
and Ryan saves them from an assassination attempt. So in the movie, it's different characters, but it is part of the royal family. So that
Oh,
was yeah, that was a good plot line. So
that's cool.
you know,
That's cool. But yeah, I think this is an interesting and entertaining movie. I think if you have any interest in like spy stuff, the intelligence community, like the Cold War,
hmm
submarines,
yeah, a lot of subs, or
uh,
if you're an avid smoker,
yeah, Scottish accents
or if you
that make
sweat a lot.
no attempt to be Russian accents,
If you have
Russian furry naval hats.
hyperhidrosis,
Yeah. You
if you
like
suffer,
sonar.
yeah. Well, if nothing else, if you want to take a look at the beginnings or early careers of a lot of these actors, don't you think? I mean,
Yes.
I mean,
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
a lot of it. It is a big movie. It's
Hmm.
there's a lot of we have a lot of locations. We have a lot of different moving parts and stuff. But I
Hmm.
think the movie does a good job of pulling it all together. It's not
Agreed.
doesn't feel disjointed, or at least it doesn't to me.
Yeah. I think you get a sense of like how these things really work, right? Because there is a sort of political diplomatic part of things with you see with like the national security advisor talking to the Soviet ambassador. There's an intelligence and like planning part of things, which you see like when Jack Ryan meets with the NSA and the Joint Chiefs,
Mhm.
right? And the as James Earl Jones is sharing intelligence with him. Then there's the actual like operational
Yeah,
military portion of things, which you see on the submarines, and they all like play into each other, which again makes me think of that stupid signals chat. But
it's like
and none of it is supposed to happen like in a group text.
no.
Um, but yeah, I think you can see like multiple levels of like how these things happen. It's not just like a general on an admiral on a submarine like making decisions, right? They're getting information from the intelligence community, and the intelligence people are also communicating with like the political side of things about how we want to handle what the
Right.
information we found and stuff like that. So it does, I think, illustrate how a lot of these pieces work together to deal with these larger issues, especially at a time like the Cold War when it's like this sort of constant like game of chicken a little bit of like, well, I don't want to like start it, but I also don't want to like be caught off guard and
And
be
lose it.
bombed. So
Right.
like we're
Yeah.
constantly like,
hmm
what are you doing? What am I gonna do? Oh, there's all these ships coming. What's happening? What are you doing? Like,
Right. And yeah, and I think the writing in the books really, and it's the reason I think they took it from that, but it did such a good job of interweaving all the plots and stuff and like that, and putting all that together. So, um,
mhm.
again, like once I started watching this again, I hadn't seen it in a while, but this is one of those movies for me when it comes on, when it is on, I just got to turn it on. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and I can see the opening scene that if anyone ever gets if they ever show it again in a movie theater, see the opening scene where
Mm,
they're in the conning tower of the Red October, and that just because it just filled the screen at the center of the theater. It was like you were there. It was just larger than life. It was just
mm,
beautiful. It was just great, and the music I think is very very good. So
yeah.
a lot of Russian music. So but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
orchestral. It's
A very long Soviet anthem.
yeah, I hope that I guess they learned that early on in age, so so they can
Yes.
sing all 12 stanzas of it. So,
Yes. Yes.
well, thank you for
Absolutely.
indulging me in watching a spy thriller from the Cold War. So,
Absolutely. I think it was an entertaining movie. It was an interesting
good.
movie. So, and I like Sean Connery's accent, even though again he did not try at all. He was like Russian, whatever. I'm Sean
Yeah,
Connery.
I, exactly. What was the phrase you said? What was it? Just
Just one thumb.
that's from the Presidio where he was
Okay.
the yeah, and it was Mark Harmon, the
Hmm.
yeah, that was good. Where he played an American military officer with a sounding like he just came out of Glasgow. So,
I think that was a quote that like one of my friends like moms would say. So that became like
oh
my
really?
index quote for like Sean
Sean
Connery. But
Connery.
it's easy. It is a good like entry point to the accent.
Yes.
Just one thumb.
Let's close my eyes. I could see Sean. So
Exactly. Exactly. It's like he's back. It's like he's back.
exactly. So
I hope that's the experience for all of our listeners. You're just like, wow, Sean Connery is here.
I know. I know. How did they channel Sean Connery to come onto the podcast? So
Sweet.
skills, people, skills.
I do my best. Well, anything else you want to add about The Hunt for Red October?
No, no. If hopefully, if you all haven't seen it, please see it, and if you haven't seen it in a while, enjoy it again. So
Yeah,
yeah, like I did.
I definitely think it's worth watching. It's a cool one, and it's kind of it started this Jack Ryan movie and television universe. So
Yeah,
I
another
think it,
franchise.
yeah. So wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe so you can get our new episodes delivered to you every Monday when they come out. You can leave a rating, a review, a comment. Hopefully, it's nice, or else we are going to send the full might of the Soviet Navy to find you. You can also follow us on Instagram at Some of Our Parts Pod. You can see all the other movies that we've talked about. You can see little previews of what is coming and whatever else we decide to share. And with that, bye bye.
До свидания.